Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to episode 11 of In the Box. The 3-day Christmas break is finally in the books. This is our first episode in like 10 days. We're back on the normal schedule. Matt, how are we doing?
I'm good. I'm wishing there was a little bit more news for us to talk
Yes.
about, honestly, but we have enough to get a little bit of a show out
Yeah,
there.
we got Lalonde getting fired. That was on the 26th. But outside of that, Remps suspended. We're not going to lead off with the New York Rangers story for once in this goddamn podcast.
Thank goodness.
Chris Kreider getting scratched. Mackenzie Blackwood, after like 4 games, getting a decent bag from the Colorado Avalanche. A little bit of World Juniors talk based on what has happened in the round robin. Then we're going to do a Macklin Celebrini would you rather, because he's just playing so good right now. We're going to compare him to some of the other young studs in the NHL on top of like veteran guys over the next 10 to 15 years. Who would you rather have? And then at the end, to wrap up 2024, they're watching this, tomorrow, so on New Year's Eve, we're going to be doing a 2024 NHL draft based on just what players did in the 2024 calendar year. That'll definitely be interesting. It's our first draft. It's probably going to be another shit show. We're probably going to forget some guys. But yeah, let's dive into it, and we're going to do the Red Wings up first. I don't know.
The New York Red Wings?
Yes. Yeah. It's just an urge to talk about to trash the New York Rangers every single time. But yeah, Derek Lalonde got fired tragically after the Detroit Red Wings fans called me an idiot for saying they were going to be like an 80-point team. They started 13, 17, and 4 under Lalonde, was on pace for like 72 points. I'll go first on this. It was unacceptable. Like, we talked about it before. Like, we weren't that high in Detroit as a team, but we thought that they were still going to be like a half decent team, at least put it together, probably around 80 points. So the fact that they were critically underperforming even those standards that we already thought were pretty low, it was unacceptable. The penalty kill was god-awful. It was 67% under him. If the New York Islanders didn't exist, that would have by far been the worst in the entire NHL. And although their young core isn't like, they're not playing like shit. Raymond's playing pretty good. Seider is okay right now, and Edvinsson has been pretty good. Basically, everybody else in that team is struggling for the most part. And Lalonde, you gave him a full 2.5 seasons basically at this point, and considering they regressed so heavily, and even last year they were kind of a fluky ass team with 32 goals scored above expected. The Canucks were second in that department by like 12. They were second. So last year was a fluke. This year they're even disappointing based on what I thought they were. So yeah, that's going to lead to a guy in Lalonde getting fired. What are your thoughts on Lalonde, and then what do you think about the McClellan hire?
I mean, Lalonde had to go. It seems pretty clear. The main thing that strikes out to me is Mo Seider. You know, in that 2.5-year stretch, I don't think he's improved like at all. Right? He comes on really hot. Mm-hmm. You're thinking this is the core piece of the rebuild. Mm-hmm. He's going to get better and better and better. And like maybe not. Maybe like his rookie level was his ceiling, and every year since is just going to be a less consistent version of that. Right now, that's how it looks, which is really, really bad.
Still a good player, but
he's a good player, but he's not improving consistently, right?
Franchise like, number one.
Someone like Quinn
10.
Hughes, right? We saw he came on, scored quite a lot, but showed significant improvement over the last couple years.
Yeah.
We're not seeing that improvement from Seider. And, you know, like you said, the team's just, it's not scoring. They're not. They have, I don't think that's really a Lalonde problem. I think a lot of that is just like, this is not a very deep roster. It's not super well put together. I don't know how much people expect the Red Wings to score in the minutes when Larkin and Raymond aren't on the ice, but like, I'm not surprised they're not really scoring at all. McClellan is a bang average recycle hire.
Yeah.
He's had a reasonable amount of success pretty much everywhere he went, but nothing terribly impressive. I think that a coach who is actively really good probably should have got at least one first-round upset in his LA Kings tenure, which he never did.
Especially when he coached the Edmonton Oilers for multiple years and should know them inside and out because it's the same core. But yeah.
Yeah. The thing with McClellan in LA especially was he had this super defensive system, 1-3-1, basically the modern-day spin on a neutral zone trap. And Detroit doesn't have anything close to the personnel to pull that off. They have, you know, not nearly the caliber of defenseman that LA had, right? You have Ben Chirot out there instead of like Jordan Spence as your number 8. LA had depth there. LA had elite defensive centers. You have Kopitar and Deneau. Detroit doesn't have that. Detroit right now doesn't even have any young forwards on the roster who look like they'll develop into that. So like, I want to say this is at least like a high floor type hire in like a Torts kind of way, but I'm not even so sure I believe that because I don't think McClellan's skill set lines up really well with the players that Detroit has.
Yeah, definitely. I think I glaze this guy nonstop. But someone like Jay Woodcroft that plays more of a fast-paced, modern game, I think would have been a good guy to kind of develop Lucas Raymond more so, as well as Mort Sider. And even with McClellan, the thing that scares me is like obviously you want this team to play better than they are right now. But we talked about it before, like how a top 5 pick wouldn't be the worst thing ever for the Detroit Red Wings. If he somehow comes in and they're just winning like 2-1, 3-2, boring styles of hockey, and Mort Sider does not continue offensively, and Simon Edmondson kind of stalls out, and they finish with 84, 85 points and are selecting like 11th overall and pick up just some average prospect in this draft that does fall off a decent amount after like 5th or 6th overall. Again, you don't want it to continue to be this bad, but it would be pretty funny if they finish and don't. It's just another perfectly mediocre year instead of getting that high draft pick.
And I want to say it. This is where it goes on Yzerman, I think, as the GM, because there are some teams out there. Dallas is one of them who had a slow period, but it was never like a tank type rebuild. And the whole reason why is because they were really good at drafting players in those like late lottery, early playoff, mid first round spots and getting actual really productive players from there. Whereas Yzerman has, completely failed at getting quality NHL talent outside of the top 10. He is really not drafted well outside of like you should be drafting well at those picks, right?
Yeah, ASP was 17th overall, but that was a case where like he kind of fell. Not. It was still a good pick. I'm not sure I should on Yzerman for that, but yeah, that was the one case, and even he was like, "How is he still available at 17th overall?"
Yeah, I mean, I like him as a prospect. We'll see how it works out when he gets real minutes in there. But Detroit, broadly speaking, like their second round picks, they've got no production out of any second round Yzerman pick.
Yeah, that's fair. 2019 to 2020, 2021. Buchnikov could potentially be something in Russia. But yeah, this definitely falls on Yzerman more, but you're not going to fire him at this point. You're probably going to give him at least till the end of next season. So the coach is going to go. But yeah, Yzerman did just assemble like a perfectly mediocre to below average team. I'm not sure you could have expected Lalonde to really turn around. Andrew Kampf, JT Compher, who else? Ben Sherrod, as you mentioned, Justin Hull. Like the failure of this team is definitely more on Yzerman's roster ability. Lalonde, it kind of stinks for him because he's probably never going to get another NHL job. But similarly to a guy that we talked about before in Drew Bannister, he rightfully so did get fired because the team was just so underperforming what we relatively thought. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I don't know how long McClellan signed for because, again, I think that he's a good coach to come in, like now motivate the group for like 40 games. If they gave him like a 2 to 3 year deal, I'm not that high on it, but they needed to definitely do something because they were trending in the wrong direction, and any winning culture that they built last year was starting to kind of erode away. Any other thoughts on?
I just think that Woodcroft was a good shout. That's a guy who I am very surprised none of the team's recycling coaches have gone in for him. We know exactly what it looks like when Jay Woodcroft is trying to coach and develop a group of pretty talented young forwards. It works out pretty well. He never got Edmonton over the hump, and they had a couple very cold months, I guess.
The goalies fucked them.
But like, if Detroit had half of the success that Woodcroft had with the Oilers, I think they would be really happy right now with how that worked out.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know why no one's biting at him. Hopefully this offseason he gets a second job because, again, we've seen these guys get recycled. Woodcroft had like a 110-point pace career with the Edmonton Oilers. And again, he inherited an absolutely disgusting team. I'm not trying to say like he massively elevated them. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that should be in the mix for some of these jobs come this summer. What would your guess be for the next coach that gets fired at this point?
At this point, it's... the last like 3 times you asked this, I kept saying Mike Sullivan, and it's never Mike Sullivan.
It's never happening.
So I've given up on that.
Yeah.
I've given up on that. I'm thinking probably Brunette down in Nashville.
I think he's another guy that I think is at this point is safe. Like they were the worst team, and they're starting to claw a little bit back, but I think it's got to be Laviolette, just because they're so quitting on the team. And I thought Drury was going to get fired. Someone that works in the media actually told me that he was going to get fired like 2 weeks ago. It's decently credible. It ended up not happening. I prepped a full YouTube video on it. I was pissed. You saw that. You saw that thumbnail and everything. But yeah, I think the Rangers probably going to have to do something soon. And I'd also say Patrick Waugh, I think, potentially could get fired soon, just because there are such identifiable problems with the Islanders with the special teams. But yeah, Brunette, Sullivan, I'm trying to think anybody else.
I'm just really thinking, like, I look at Nashville and I see a team that I think if you know, not even a better coach per se, but just like a coach to shake up the dynamics, you have the pieces that you could turn the team around. Like the Rangers locker room seems so far beyond saving that I don't think changing the coach would do anything. The Islanders' roster problems are so clear that I don't think any coach would save them. I don't think Rod Brind'Amour could get this current Islanders team into the playoffs.
I don't know about that. I think, it's not like they're that far out with Ottawa, but it's definitely disgusting. But yeah, I'm trying to think if Marty St. Louis got fired, that wouldn't be till the offseason. You're not firing him mid-season to spark the group to finish with 75 points. Let me think. Andre Tournier, even though he's like the fourth longest tenured coach, Utah's actually playing pretty good. But yeah, that's Detroit. Lalonde definitely needed to go. Don't know if we love the McClellan firing, and don't know if Detroit's going to be able to turn it around. And if they do, if that's honestly a net positive long term. But yeah, we're going to move on. We're going to now talk about a little bit of the Rangers.
Let's go.
Matt Rempe got suspended 8 games for crushing Miro Heiskanen into the boards and throwing an elbow out there. I'll start first. People trying to defend him is absolutely ridiculous. I get that he's a big dude. His elbows are higher up than some people's that are at eye level with some people. But Heiskanen's 6'2". It's not like he crushed Cole Caulfield, who's 5'7". Like, he clearly got that elbow high. And although 8 games is crazy, and I kind of thought it was crazy in the moment when you consider he just got ejected out of 4 different games. He's been suspended before. They're obviously going to make some kind of example out of him. I don't hate like making an example out of Matt Rempe, who's probably going to be out of the NHL in 2 to 3 years. So yeah, for the Rangers, although he maybe sparks them up, and they need that right now, he's not a good hockey player, and he's a goon, and players like him probably should no longer be in the NHL.
Yeah, I mean, he's a thug. It is what it is. You know, it would be one thing if he like actually had like significant hockey talent that the Rangers would be unfortunate missing. You know?
If he was
like,
Tom Wilson.
Tom Wilson's a thug who also offers you significant goal scoring and just like a generally good power forward, or like prime Wayne Simmons, great power forward. Rempe, 22 career games. He's been ejected from 4 of those, you said.
Yeah.
Now racked up 12 games of suspension. I mean, there's just no place for it. And of course it was a justified thing. He's a repeat offender. People just like can't seem to get it through their brains that even though he's only been like in the world of the NHL for about 10 months, he's a multi-repeat offender, but he is, so good for them suspending him like one.
And especially when he takes out a guy as talented and highly regarded as Miro Heiskanen. Not trying to say like they wouldn't suspend him if it was some like fourth liner, but when you go after one of the best defensemen in the entire NHL, and especially when it's Rempe's like first game, I think that was his only game that he got called up for. They obviously won. That's what Ranger fans talk about. Like, we won the game. It worked clearly. But like, when you literally come up, he's like a goon for hire. He came up for 1 game and now he's suspended 8. Get him out of the NHL, and get other players that are that bad and that dangerous out of the NHL.
I'll share this with the pod audience because we're in the hockey chats, keeping it up. Everyone's sending each other fun jokes. Someone compared the Rangers' record of winning games when Rempe was playing to the crime rate, the murder rate with ice cream sales correlation. Hopefully you guys in your stat classes know what's up there, but just very... that's what it is, right? Like the Rangers win, yes, and technically Rempe showed up. It's so dumb to pretend that Rempe is why they're winning.
Yeah, they are some crazy like 20-5 with him in the lineup. Like, again, even last year, with him not in the lineup, they were still like one of the best teams in the NHL, and now this year he's come up for a couple games. It's just brutal. We'll also talk about Chris Kreider getting scratched. Finally, they scratched one of the big guys. I don't have any like massive thoughts on it. Maybe he'll get traded. I think he probably is the one guy that could potentially get traded. Don't think anything's like imminent in terms of a trade. But yeah, 3 years left at $6.5 million. He's been playing like absolute garbage. He better be the 13th forward for Team USA at Four Nations. But yeah, it's been bad, and it's good that Laviolette is finally actually like scratching some of the more talented guys that are more so at fault relative to the way that this team should be playing compared to Capo Caco, who's like an irrelevant third liner.
Yeah, I mean, it is good. I think everyone who watches the Rangers enough is pretty aware at this point that, in whatever order you put the two of them, Kreider and Zibanejad are the ones who need to step it up. Scratching one of them is a start. I think the Rangers would like to trade Chris Kreider if they could get, anything real back for him. I don't see that happening this year. Like, I think Kreider's a case of, at a certain point, you do need the guy to start playing and producing a little bit so he can, even just temporarily pump that trade value back up to normal, show you some flash of like, this is why another team would want to trade for him. Although the Rangers are seemingly pretty great at getting rid of contracts that I think are bad and not having to pay anything to get rid of them. So, Drury has some skills as a GM. I'll give him that much.
Yeah, right now they'd get some actual like bad middle six forward that's also making like $5 to $6 million compared to Kreider, where there's like at least some hope. He's fucking a year removed from 39 goals, 36 assists, 75 points. Like he can turn it around to some degree, but yeah, you're right. Right now the market would be some young player, some half decent young player that's a third liner right now and like a pick, or it would be just swapping two bad contracts. And if you're the Rangers, you probably wait until this offseason, wait until teams have more cap, and you can potentially do something, trade him, then pick someone up in free agency, compared to force some kind of trade, force yourself into maybe even a worse contract.
Here's a silly hypothetical, and I think it probably wouldn't work because of no trade clauses. But I see like Nazem Kadri in Calgary as the kind of contract maybe that Calgary would be interested in getting rid of. And Kreider's is at least it ends much quicker.
Yeah, 3 versus 6 years. Or no, I think Kadri has 5, including this one. Kreider has 3. So yeah, it's comparable. Yeah,
I think that's like a potential in theory. I think Kadri could, spark the Rangers, give them something different in the locker room. I think Kreider in an environment with no media pressure like that could rebound. And again, if he doesn't, at least like Calgary's clearly rebuilding and they get the money off the books faster.
Yeah, definitely. You could trade Kreider a season from now when he has 1.5 years left at the deadline. You maybe eat some money. But yeah, that's our Ranger talk. It was a little bit limited. It was only 7 to 8 minutes today instead of taking up the first 20 minutes of the show. We're going to move on to one of the last NHL story that we have. Mackenzie Blackwood had a hot start with the Avs, having like a .930 in his first 3 to 4 games. Gets a 5-year deal at $5.25 million. I think you have pretty strong feelings on this. I think it's okay. I don't hate the individual deal that much. He's going to be the 15th highest goalie cap hit next season to Darcy Kemper at 5.25. It's okay. I just don't like it from the Avs perspective of just like locking it in. This is our guy for the next 5 years, even though he hasn't been on the team that much, even though we know that he's not some kind of elite guy. I understand that he was good in San Jose, but outside of like his rookie year in New Jersey, he's never had like a top 10 goalie season. For a team to just say, we're content with a guy that's probably going to fluctuate between being the 13th and 21st best goalie in the NHL on this deal. He fits the timeline. He still is only 28 years old, even though he's been in the NHL for like 5 seasons. It just seems to be settling. And obviously they should have went after Olmark and Markstrom this offseason. That goes without saying. But to just lock in Mackenzie Blackwood, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it feels a little bit underwhelming for me.
I do hate it. I hate this deal. I do. And I don't hate the money. I don't. I think the money itself is fine. What I hate is A, the term, B, like you said, locking it in now, C, the long-term planning, right? I mean, Mackenzie Blackwood does not have 5 good NHL seasons. He doesn't even have 5 NHL seasons of being like a starter quality, right? Because he had the 2 seasons in New Jersey where he was genuinely like negative WAR, put him in the AHL type goalie. So I don't understand why you would want to commit 5 years to him. I don't understand at all why you would want to do it now. I mean, there's no reason to. I can't think of a single reason why you would want to pay Mackenzie Blackwood now instead of waiting until after your playoff run in the summer. I mean, if If he's inconsistent for you, you probably don't want to commit 5 years to him. If he looks solid but has a terrible playoffs and gives you Darcy Cooper flashbacks, you probably don't want 5 years of him. If he's amazing, right? If he balls out, wins the Conn Smythe, Colorado takes home the Stanley Cup, how much more is he really getting on this contract, right? Like,
Yeah, he's not going to
Aiden
sway
Hill
him in
didn't get
immediately
that
after.
much more than this, right? Like, it's Blackwood gets at like best case scenario the most possible money. He's getting what, $6 million flat?
6 point. If he wins a Conn Smythe, if he goes on a deep run, yeah, I'd say like 6 by 6.25 at most.
At most, I'm kind of doubtful even on that. So it's, I don't know. You're taking a huge risk locking in this much to, in my opinion, save a pretty small amount of money on like if he balls out.
Yeah.
And I hate it because Colorado has like the big free agent, right, coming into the market this summer, and we are already committing this $5.25 million of money next year.
Sure, yeah.
That could be an issue, right? We don't actually have any like firm source on how much money they're offering to Mikko Rantanen, but like we absolutely could get into a scenario where like, oh, they can't afford that. They could have afforded that if they went into the summer with no goalies on the roster, but now that they've committed to Blackwood, they can't afford Rantanen and he's gone. Maybe that's a pretty small chance of something like that happening, but there's a chance, right? It's not zero chance that this is going to end up taking them out of the Rantanen sweepstakes because they overpaid Mackenzie Blackwood, which would be like the worst thing for this team.
Yeah, I didn't consider that. Yeah, if you're Rantanen and you're like, this guy just got a massive contract after four games with this club. I've played over 500 with you guys. I've won a Stanley Cup, and you're not willing to meet my demands. I think that they'll figure it out by trading one of their forwards or trading one of their defensemen. I think they will prioritize Rantanen if it comes to that. And also, I think we talked about it before, but if Rantanen wants like $14 million, it's not the worst thing in the world to just say, no, we're all set. We'll spend that money on Blackwood and then a forward and a defenseman and kind of depth out our team instead of giving you all this money. But yeah, as you elegantly put it, there's not that much saving value to do with this. Granted, I hated the Joey Decord deal in the moment, the 5x5, for the same reason as you. And he's playing great right now. He probably would have gotten a 6x6 right now if they were to re-sign. But yeah, just for a team like Colorado where they had all these expectations after the 2022 season to now be in the spot that they are, especially with the goaltending, it's very unfortunate. Now, granted, if this was a 3-year deal, I think it would have been perfect because they had drafted in the early second round Ilya Nabokov, no relation to Evgeny Nabokov, in this early second round. He's been great in the KHL. He's an overager. He's 21 years old, so he might be NHL ready relatively soon. So if this was a 3-year deal, absolutely would have loved it. The fact it's a 5-year deal and he's just locked in to be the guy for the future, this doesn't really move me, especially in the Central Division where I've hammered this home about Colorado. You got Hellebuck. You got Gustafsson, who looks like he's all the way back. You got Ottinger. It's just a goalie landmine with how many good guys there are in that division. And you're just rolling out with Mackenzie Blackwood the next 6 years, basically now, once you add on this year on top. It's going to be interesting. They have the top-end talent. They just need him to play solid. It's not like they need him to play Connor Hellebuck regular season-wise. But,
no, I mean, they just need him to be average. The problem is, Mackenzie Blackwood plays to an average level, like maybe 60% of the time over the course of his career. There's a lot of stretches where he's like genuinely no better than the guys they've been so desperate to get rid of.
Yeah, them coming into the season with Georgiev saying this is our guy is just such a black mark on Chris McFarland. And if Mackenzie Blackwood ends up choking it the rest of the way and they lose early in the playoffs, I wouldn't hate the idea of him getting fired, considering he had to fix that goalie position the last year or so, and it hasn't happened anywhere close. Okay, but moving on, now we're going to talk about the World Junior Championships. We're recording this on Monday, so it's been like an absolutely insane day for the World Juniors, if it has not already been. Latvia just beat Germany to advance. They now have 2 wins in group stage, on top of the fact that Kazakhstan, although they lost in overtime, they somehow got a point against a team that we thought were going to be a decent team in Slovakia. But yeah, I guess I'll go first. All these teams might just stink. I don't know. This is going to drop before the U.S.-Canada game, so I'm sure like some people are going to watch this on Wednesday and be like, Canada, you beat whatever, USA beat Canada. But yeah, all these teams have pretty decent flaws considering Canada's offense is anemic at this point, and we'll really dive into that, why that is. USA, their defense core is pretty shit. Zeev Boyum and Cole Hudson are fun to watch offensively, but they definitely have some defensive struggles, and just overall, they've not been that impressive. On top of Sweden, they haven't really played anybody, but allowing 5 goals to Switzerland is quite concerning. And yeah, what's your initial takeaways from this?
Yeah, I mean, you're more plugged into this than me for sure. I don't want to pretend to talk about stuff I don't know too much about as far as like the depth of these teams and like the overall roster quality.
What's the casual?
The casual take in here. Number one, Jimmy Hagens is him, which like I was feeling the entire time. Like in this, I feel like last summer everyone pretty much agreed that Hagens looked like a clear-cut number one.
Best draft year, -1.
And then, to me, it always kind of, not that the other guys are poor, but to me it always seemed like, the media needs clicks. So let's pretend this is a bigger race for number one than it really is. Maybe that's me being, too much of a bum read and being unfair.
USA biased.
Being unfair to Martone.
Mr. America over here.
But, based on what's happened in this tournament, Hagens is reestablishing himself as the guy. And that backs up what I already believed going in. So I'm pretty happy with that. ASP has been fantastic. He's like the one, I guess, prospect who's like, okay, this is a guy who's, impressing me, selling me now. I have no idea if Sweden's roster overall is quality enough to win it. I do know that if Canada loses, it's going to be because they made like bad roster picks that were pretty obviously bad roster picks at the time.
Everybody in their
I'm not super plugged in again to like the depth lower down guys that Canada picked to be on this team. I do know that Seneca is, fantastic. Peric is fantastic, and they're not on the team, and now Canada's underperforming, and it's like, I don't know, maybe if you brought Peric along, things would be looking pretty different right now.
Decent, yeah. I think, I've said it to death, but them deciding to pick like two-way bottom sixers at the junior level, it just doesn't matter, more so the defensive game, because none of these guys are like refined two-way players for the most part. They are more so offensive players. So at this level, just go with the offensive firepower. Puck possession is the name of the game. You see these teams be able to just hold the puck forever because they have some of these high-end offensive players. So deciding to go with Cole Beaudoin, I think I'm mispronouncing that name for once, me mispronouncing, but I'm going with him instead of like Zane Perek, not Zane Perek, what am I saying? Beckett Seneca, Andrew Crystal, who's like leading the WHL in points per game, as well as I'm forgetting someone else. Liam Greentree, I'm definitely forgetting someone else. But and especially when it comes to the defense core in that power play, to not have a guy like Zane Perek, who is one of the most dominant players that I've ever seen at the junior level from the blue line in terms of just controlling the game. It's disgraceful. They could easily still win the gold. I'm not trying to say that they're cooked, but it's just insane that we watched against Latvia, against Germany. The offense struggles so much. And even after Matthew Schaefer, which I do think Matthew Schaefer versus James Hagens is a decent debate, they decided to go with Sawyer Minio, who was like the 7th defenseman they brought along when they could have called up Zane Perek or Carter Yakimchuk. On the first overall pick debate, I agree with you that it's Hagens is now running away with it, but only because Matthew Schaefer got freaking chopped by a goalie net because he played great even when he was playing for the game in 2 minutes that he did. I think that he is a legit stud. I think that once he comes back from injury, he'll have a strong finish at the end of the year. The only problem is he's only going to play like 30, 40 games this season compared to Hagens, who's going to have the good World Juniors, who's going to go on Boston College, maybe win the national title. I think Porter Mortone, though, his stock is definitely slipping because even though the roster management and the coaching is confusing, he probably shouldn't have gotten healthy scratched in that third game for Canada. The fact that he was playing only 7 minutes a night and really wasn't that noticeable. And for me personally, his skating was noticeable in a bad way. I think that's going to hurt his draft stock. That might take him out. Definitely not at the top 4 discussion, but maybe outside of that first overall. And Michael Misa, just by nature, not playing, not having eyeballs on him compared to James Hagens is definitely going to hurt him in that debate. It's not over, but it's definitely Hagens heavily the favorite now.
And I do think it's going to be maybe interesting future looking now because if Hagen's, assuming he gets drafted number 1, there's a college guy, right? And last year was a college guy, and now we changed the rules so that Canadians can play in college. And it's just like objectively true that the college hockey level is more consistently higher quality competition you're against, especially from the perspective of like, if you're a small forward proving that you can play against bigger defensemen and scoring on like
Grown
tougher
men,
physical
23,
teams,
24-year-olds.
you definitely prove a lot more in the NCAA than you do in the CHL. And I saw, don't have the name, but the Swedish top prospect
Ivan
for
Stenberg
next year.
Yeah. Michael
2
Misa.
years
Michael
from now.
Misa is like committed to play for Boston, but they can't officially say that until the season's
the
over.
Swedish top prospect 2 years from now is going to be playing in college next year. So I think this could end up being like a larger shift towards the college level. And, you know, someone like Schaefer, it's, you know, maybe he would have the chance to prove more against college teams. Because for someone like him, the World Juniors are your chance to prove it against better competition, right? I mean, I'm sure your Canadian viewers care very deeply about all of the various CHL teams, but it's frankly not.
It's over.
You're not facing those big, tough, more defensive-minded defensemen in the Canadian junior leagues. You just aren't.
Yeah, and just overall playing in Hockey East, playing in the Big Ten, playing in, I forget what conference Denver plays in, but like the Midwest conference. Yeah, it's just overall better quality of play. Basically, every single team has a handful of drafted players, and then the guys that aren't drafted players are 22, 23-year-olds that have been in college for 3 to 4 years, transferred up levels. It's inevitable. I still think the CHL is going to exist they might have to like lower the age, so like players start coming in at 15 to 18, and like some guys stick around past then. Maybe you cap it at 19. But yeah, just inevitable. Like the fact I had to like debate people in comment sections being like, Gavin McKenna should stay in Medicine Hat instead of go to Michigan, which first off, just the college life is far. I know he's not going to be partying his ass off, but like just better overall quality of life. You're playing better hockey and you have far better facilities. Like Michigan hockey is treated like the goddamn football program. They have absolutely insane facilities. So it's just better overall for the players to leave. Like maybe if you're playing like London, like the London Knights is like the premier OHL team, but beyond that, taking bus rides, especially in the WHL around Western Canada, compared to being in Michigan, flying private jets or flying first class, like it's just not debatable. And I think we're gonna really, I think it hasn't dawned on Canadians right now, but like once the CHL season ends, when like 15 of their best players that could have came back the following season go to college, it's gonna be pretty interesting. And we've already seen it with Adam Fantilli, Owen Power, Mac and Celebrini go down the USHL route just to get to the college level. So now that you can stay in the CHL, you can stay in Canada and start playing when you're 15 years old. Yeah, it's collapsing. This turned into CHL doom and gloom segment. But you got anything else on that?
I don't actually. No.
All right. What do you want to do first? Celebrini. Would you rather? So are we gonna do? What should we put the time horizon on this? Definitely got to cap it because some of these guys like 10 years, 8 years.
You can do 8 years.
8 years, I think that's fair. Yeah. All right, Celebrini, would you rather? I'm going to give you a player. We're going to go 3, 2, 1, whether you'd have this player or Celebrini for the next 8 years. Up first, this has been talked about a lot. Connor Bedard. 3, 2, 1. Bedard. I'll go first. I think if you put Bedard on the San Jose Sharks this season, and granted, he's a year older, so I just think he'd be a better player. I think that he would be genuinely putting up like 90, 95 point pace and just be a monster. Chicago has failed them this season, at least. Whether their entire rebuild will work is another thing. But yeah, he's playing with trash in Chicago since Luke Richardson has gotten fired. He's been playing at around point per game pace yet again. I still am believing in Bedard. He might not be the more complete player than Celebrini, but I still trust his shot and just his overall offensive creation to end up being better than Celebrini. What about you?
I think that based on what they've actually accomplished in the NHL, I don't really see an argument for Bedard over Celebrini. Bedard certainly had like a better like career coming into being drafted. He certainly had more hype at the start of it. And, you know, he's sustained his level of production for longer. which, that's worth something, right? Celebrini, we're talking 37 games.
Not even. He was out for 12 games. It's been like 20, 26.
Someone might figure him out sooner than later, and he might be the kind of player who drops off in his second year. But from what he's actually done on the ice right now, he's a dynamic scorer, and he's like a better all-around player than Bedard. San Jose, they let in less goals. They have less expected goals against when Celebrini's on the ice. That's not true for Bedard in Chicago. Chicago's, extremely mediocre bottom nine is better at preventing goals than when Connor Bedard is on the ice. So it's, I see why Bedard has upside. I just don't think he's really, frankly, he hasn't proven his hype.
No,
Definitely
not to the
right
level.
now.
Yeah, the generational hype he is definitely not living up to. But again, I still think the teams can just put such a focus on him, considering they have literally nothing in that bottom nine after him. I still watch him on a nightly basis, and I'm still wowed at least a couple times a game by his overall skill set. And I think the shot will continue to develop and will really start to pop soon once he gets an actual dynamic line mate. Should have been Ivan Demidov, but they decided to go with Artem Leshinov. You want to move on to the next one?
Let's do it.
All right, next up, Tim Stützle. He has 7 years left at $8.35 million. 3, 2, 1, Celebrini.
Oh, wow.
What the hell? I think this one's. If we're going the next 8 years and I'm building a team, you got to factor in the ELC on this. 3 of the years I'm getting Celebrini at $900K.
I mean, you can factor that in. You also need to factor in that Stützle's better than Celebrini.
No, yeah,
for
right
those
now
3
he's
years.
definitely better. Yeah. I think by year 3, Celebrini could be better.
You
This
really
year,
think so?
definitely Stützle. Next year, yeah, Stützle's still going to be better. Don't get me wrong, but I think definitely by like year 4. The ELC is what really matters for this.
I mean,
over 8
I
years.
look at Stützle and I see a guy who's like, maybe his ceiling, he's still not at his ceiling yet.
No, that's fair. That's
'Cause
fair.
we've seen the growth on him, and it's, the ceiling of what we've seen of him right now is what, like 35 goal, 90-point player who's like a very physical forechecker. What if the ceiling is, we're talking like 45 goals, 100 points? I'm not so confident Celebrini could get there eventually. I'm not so confident he'll get there until he's in like year 5, year 6, year 7. Like, if Celebrini's, frankly, is better as a rookie than like Nate McKinnon was, but like a Nate McKinnon style
Stalled out,
trajectory means
Stalled
like
the first 4 seasons.
yeah, like he's it's possible. Celebrini is good, not amazing, and he stays good, not amazing for 4 years, 5 years, and that's how long it takes him to take the next step. Granted, you could literally say all of that about Bedard. I get it. I don't feel that way.
Yeah, I guess you could also make the counterpoint for you saying that like Celebrini, if he pops the first 3 years, we'll get a bigger contract. So then 5 years, the next 5 years, it'll be Celebrini at $11, $12 million. But yeah, I just look at Celebrini and how impressive he's been as a rookie. Tim Stützle was not nearly as good as a rookie, but and he's also extremely young for his age, which is really impressive. He's a late June birthday, so it's his entire 18-year-old season. I just think Celebrini, in terms of an overall playmaking ability, might be better than Tim Stützle. And based on the rookie year at 18 years old, I think I bet on him. Tim Stützle is definitely the safer pick, though. I can't lie. Next up, Jack Hughes, another young center that's locked up. 6 years at $8 million. 3, 2, 1, Jack Hughes. I thought you were going to go Celebrini.
Nah.
Yeah. He's already a top 15 player. He's had multiple seasons as a top 15 player. I think this season might honestly be his best in terms of a complete two-way game. Him and Bratt are just unreal this season. Yeah, he's been probably a top 10 player this season and one of the best players in transition point-blank period. Maybe he isn't as physical as a Macklin Celebrini, but again, we've seen it for so many years. He's locked up for doing 8 years, 6 of those 8 years on one of the best contracts in the entire NHL. I'll take the sure thing, even with the ELC of Celebrini. I'll go Jack Hughes.
Yeah, I agree with that fully. The Hughes contract seems like a very good deal to me. Just not too much to be said, right? Like,
Yeah,
take the known commodity now, Jack Hughes. We know he's a star, and we know how much he's going to get paid for most of this 8-year window, we're saying. So I'm happy to take that.
Yeah. Again, the ELC could factor in, but we're going with Jack Hughes. Leon Draisaitl, someone else that was prominently featured in a Would You Rather a couple weeks ago. 3, 2, 1. Celebrini.
Okay, we're same page. Same page.
Yeah, I'm not going against you on this one. Yeah, this really Draisaitl was still on his 8-year, $8.5 million contract. Yeah, I'm going with Draisaitl. But the fact next season an 8-year, $14 million contract kicks in at like 29 years old. Nah, give me Celebrini on that ELC. Will he ever be as good as Leon Draisaitl? Probably not. Leon Draisaitl, I mean, you're actually not that high in Leon Draisaitl. You might think differently. But yeah, Leon Draisaitl is a top 5 player, but he's going to be the highest paid player in the NHL next season, rightfully so. But there's just not a ton of insane surplus value versus Celebrini is only going to get better from here. And he's already a point per game guy, and you have your RFA rights. You can sign him some kind of cheap extension. I'd rather build around Celebrini. I'm trying to think, would the Edmonton Oilers, now they wouldn't, would they accept that good deal? You go first. You go first.
I'll take it. Yeah. If I was the Oilers, I would accept that 1-for-1 trade because it gives you a lot more money to build out depth, get another. You can get like a legit first pair defenseman in off of that. You know, Draisaitl is quite a bit older than every other name on this list, which made me kind of surprised that you picked him. I mean, he turns 30 next year.
In October too. Yeah, he's
so
an old
it's
guy.
you know. 14 mil over 8 years. That takes him through his age 37. He's like, we could very easily be talking at like a negative value contract in year 6 here. And then the last 2 years, it's like, oh, would you rather have Celebrini at 11 mil or Draisaitl at 14? And it's like, well, Celebrini's worth like 11 or 12 mil and Draisaitl's worth like 5 right now. I don't, maybe 36-year-old Leon Draisaitl, who knows? Well. He might be worth.
Yeah, I threw him on there because was it Kirill Kaprizov? Would you rather take? So I had
to do it to him. I get it.
I think people will agree with you on this one, just because again, Celebrini's making $900K the next couple of years, and already looks like the makings that he can maybe sniff the prime of Leon Draisaitl by the time that he's 24, 25 years old. And then lastly, we're going to go with a defenseman. We're going to go with Quinn Hughes. 3, 2, 1. Quinn Hughes.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, he has 3 more years at a ridiculously cheap 7.875. This obviously depends if you like what your team's looking like. If you already have a stud number 1 defenseman, maybe you go with Celebrini. If you have a stud center, you easily go with Quinn Hughes. But yeah, Quinn Hughes is 25 years old. Probably going to arguably win his second Norris. We both agree that he probably should this year. Guy's an absolute stud. In 8 years, takes him till he's 32, 33 years old. I still expect him to be a highly elite player. He's just such a high IQ guy. It's not like it's all relying on his skating ability. So yeah, Quinn Hughes is going to be a top 3 defenseman over the next 8 years, most likely, barring any injuries. Give me the sure thing over Celebrini.
I fully agree. It's a pretty easy call, I think. Quinn Hughes right now, I would call a top 5 player in the NHL. We're saying you get him for his entire prime over, Celebrini over his like ascension window. But also like Celebrini could have exactly beat for beat the first 8 years of Austin Matthews' career, to throw out a name. And I still might go Quinn Hughes when you factor in Matthews' injuries and inconsistencies.
Depends on what the extension would be post DLC, though.
Yeah,
they could get him relatively cheap.
There.
Yeah, but that's a decent comparison. Yeah, I think Quinn Hughes. So yeah, we agreed on the last 3, but we disagreed on Bedard. That's crazy. We're slipping off Bedard. All right, now we're gonna move on. We're gonna do a 2024 draft. Let me see, where did I put all this? 2024 draft. Basically, what these players accomplished in the 2024 season. Who had the better seasons? We're gonna start it off. You want to go first?
I will.
Actually, I kind of want to go first. I think
you
I know.
Go first. Okay.
All right,
go first.
All right, I'm gonna go first. And then like. We'll snake it. We'll snake it the first time. So I go first, then you go second and third, then I go fourth, and then we just go back to normal. So you get like it balances out. I'm going with Connor Hellebuck in net. I think that he is the clear pick for a goalie. I don't even know what I'm writing out. Let me write it out like an actual team. I think he's the clear. I think he's by far like at one position the most dominant guy of 2024. The playoff performance. It wasn't there, and you could ding him on that. I ding more so the Winnipeg Jets defense score. But yeah, he won the Vezina last year. It's looking like he's the odds-on favorite right now to win it. What's he had probably in the combined 2024? I didn't look it up before this. Probably like a 924. Like, he's insane. He's carried the Winnipeg Jets. I think that he's more dominant than any. I know you're probably going to pick it second overall. A defenseman, most likely. But I don't know if you're going to pick it third. But yeah, I think Hellebuck was more dominant as a defenseman, as a goalie, than any single defenseman or forward. Who you got?
I
Second and
think your
third.
pick makes. I wouldn't have made that pick, but I think it
Damn
makes
it, I shouldn't have
sense, and I get
surrendered.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't have even occurred to me to go goalie first, honestly.
I'm just thinking he's like
No, it makes sense when you
Demko,
say
Bobrovsky.
it.
Like, yeah.
Checks out. So I'll go Quinn Hughes,
I
really for
guess
all of
that,
the
yeah.
reasons we just spent talking about. I mean,
Best
he's
defenseman
he
last
is
year.
the best defenseman, and it's frankly, all right. I mean, Cale Makar has probably missed enough time where you maybe wouldn't even want to put Cale Makar on this kind of a list. It's possible. I'm not going to speak for you and what your
Yeah.
plans are. I'm just that's where my head is at. And the first forward off the board, sadly, I say sad because it's boring. It's got to be McDavid
Yeah,
after
based
that
on the
playoff
playoff.
run. You know, there are several other guys who have had better regular seasons and had better second halves last year than him,
But in
better
the
regular
playoffs,
season
yeah.
so far this year than him. But that over 40-point playoff performance, we might never see anything like that for the next decade plus.
Yeah, that's fair. I will go with Nathan McKinnon as my first forward selection. Pretty self-explanatory. Won the Hart in 2023-2024. Leading the Art Ross this season, arguably leading the Hart race, or definitely a Hart finalist at this point. Played good in the playoffs. I mean, he disappeared for a little bit against the Dallas Stars, not to go against my own guy, but still overall killed the Winnipeg Jets. And then just, I don't think it was his fault that they lost to Dallas. Dallas was just a far deeper team. Yeah, he's out non-playoffs. He's been the best forward probably in the NHL in the calendar year of 2024. But I would have went with McDavid over McKinnon, obviously.
All right, I'm picking now.
Yeah.
Give me Kirill Kaprizov,
Okay.
who is the
I know him.
NHL's leading scorer in the calendar year
Yeah,
2024.
he was. I forgot about that. Fuck. He was great.
56 goals in the calendar year 2024. He had an elite second. He was probably the best player in the second
Yeah.
half last year, right? Like,
Yeah,
if
like-
you purely voted MVP on the end of the All-Star break to the day before the playoffs started, you probably would have given that to Kaprizov.
Yeah, I think I remember I referenced this stat so many times heading into the season because it was high on Kaprizov winning the Dark Horse Hart pick and had him finishing second in the Minnesota Wild make playoffs. I think it was like 38 goals, 33 assists, 71 points, and like 46 games. I don't know exactly when that was. It might have been like mid-December of 2023, but yeah, he was insane.
Totally dominant
Yeah.
post All-Star.
Okay, I'm going to go basic. That was a good off-the-board pick. I'm going to go basic. I'll go with Kucherov here. Won the Art Ross in 2023-2024 and has been amazing yet again this season. Maybe not as good as last year, but is on pace probably for another 120-ish point season. So yeah, that's my pick. It gets tough here. It falls
does get
off. Like
tough.
this
It
is.
does.
I'm trying to
It
think. I'm
does.
trying to think. Who the hell is still available? We really prepped intensely for this.
We did. Very last
We definitely didn't think about this 10 minutes
Um,
before the episode recorded.
I'll take Bobrovsky in here
Ooh.
because I'm going to weigh his playoffs way more than like someone
Struggled-
else's
he
regular
struggled
season,
to start this
30
season.
games.
Yeah, no, that's fair. He was third in the Vezina last year. Good playoff
I
run.
just straight up think the playoffs matter more.
Yeah.
Like good for 20 playoff games,
Yeah, I got a bunch of
meh
play-
for
I got a bunch
30
of
regular
playoff
season
chokers right
games
now.
this year. I would rather have that than someone who has 30 good regular season games so far this year. But like, oh, his 9 playoff games over the summer weren't so hot.
Okay, off the heels of that, I'll go with as my third forward, Alexander Barkov. Won the Selke last year, was the best player on Florida during their Stanley Cup run. Babiak emphasizing playoff performance so much. So yeah, give me Barkov there. I got 2 more defensemen. You got a forward and a defenseman.
I do, yeah. This is like really hard. I'm trying to look up the stats right now on this, figure out what I want
Matthews
there.
won the Rocket. And also, yeah, don't think about like defenseman like
Jeez.
handedness. This is just best 3 forwards, best
Yeah,
2 like.
yeah.
If I go, like someone's always gonna be like they couldn't play together. Like if you picked Quinn Hughes and Roman Yossi, they'd be like 2 lefties. That team would stink. Shut the hell up.
You know what? I'll keep the playoff train rolling and go Bouchard for that
Bouchard.
for that second defenseman spot. Yeah,
Ooh, okay. I'll go. He played really good in the playoffs. Yeah,
he
did.
did.
kill it.
Good
I'll-
playoffs.
The common listener is not going to like that, though. I will go gutless, and I will go with Cale Makar, even though I am not as high on him this season as others. Last year still was a Norris finalist. Whether or not he was deserving of that. But yeah, monster playoffs, like 15, 16 points in 12 games, even though they ended up losing. Yeah, guy's a stud. Had 90 points last year. Decent. And then who you got?
Good stuff. Yeah.
Last forward.
Yeah, this one's gonna get me some heat, I think.
Jesper Bratt.
Sam Reinhart.
That's a good
I don't
pick.
wanna
No,
deny
no,
there.
that's actually I didn't think about that. Yeah, I think if you factor in playoffs, I'd like that more.
Factor in
than Matthews.
playoffs, and he was right there on the Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
It's
I'm trying to think. I got one more defenseman spot.
Matthias Ekholm's on the board.
Fucking if it was NHL Network, Gustav Forsling. Actually, that's not the worst pick. Roman Josi. The thing is, Fox not playing that good this season. Roman Josi not playing good this season.
I drafted both those guys in fantasy.
Yeah,
by the
I know.
way.
You fucking
That's
shit
been
the bed.
wild.
But, am I gonna go with Forsling for my last pick?
No, you
that's
can't.
such a gutless pick.
Cannot.
Who else played? I mean, Victor Hedman had a rough 2023, 2024. I might go with Forsling. Yeah, screw it. He was number one defenseman on. He was number one defenseman on a Stanley Cup winning team. If you're gonna factor in playoff success so much, I got to draft that guy. So yeah, that's our team. I got Barkov, McKinnon, Kucherov, Forsling, Makar, Hellebuck. Babs has Kaprizov, McDavid, Reinhart, Quinn Hughes, Evan Bouchard, Sergei Bobrovsky. Let us know in the comments. This is like, who won this. I'm definitely going to post these teams on Instagram probably tomorrow or when you're watching this today or maybe on January 1st. Not that would make any sense by then. But yeah, let us know in the comments who won that. Let us know your thoughts on the Celebrini, the Lalonde, the Matt Rempe, all that good stuff. Fun episode. We'll be seeing you in the next one. Peace.